Greetings and many thanks for this invitation. First of all, I would like to thank the APORDE family for inviting me for this session. So for the first session, we have three papers. Two of them are on South Africa, and then one that is just generally on the YMO region. So we have three presentations in this session, which allow me to just read some of the profiles of the presenter. So I'll start with the first presenter, who will be coming up shortly. So we have Noha Salah Mahmoud, who is an experienced urban planning and sustainable development expert. She has more than 25 years of experience in urban and regional planning and sustainable development, with extensive experience working with government organizations and the private sector in Egypt. She has participated in several national and government projects, in addition to working on international organization projects in Egypt, which has enhanced her expertise in policy development, follow-up procedures, problem solving, and procedure improvement. She holds 2 master's degrees, a Master of Science in Architecture and Urban Planning, and a Master of Business Administration, in addition to a diploma in Geographical Information Systems. She is a PhD researcher at Cairo University. So at this juncture, I would like to welcome Noha, if you are there, if you could share your screen.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Noha Salah, and of course, I have a great introduction here, so I will not represent myself. So today we are going to talk about resilient industrial development in Africa, urban planning, responses to climate and economic risks. For the introduction, we could start by saying that Africa's industrial development is a focal point. The continent is facing significant challenges and uncertainties, from climate change to economic stability or instability. Urban planning is not just about infrastructure or land division. It's about designing industrial zones that can adapt and thrive among pressures. For example, sub-Saharan Africa loses about 2 to 4 of GDP annually due to climate disasters. This is according to World Bank for a report for 2021. So Africa can unlock sustainable growth and reduce vulnerability and create jobs by integrating resilience into urban planning. So in this presentation, we are going to try to explore how urban planning can create resilient industrial zones that resist these challenges while fostering sustainable growth. Well, let's get started by defining resilience. So what is resilience? The first question is, what is resilience? We may answer it by saying that resilience in industrial development means designing systems that can absorb shocks and uncertainties, things like floods or economic downturns, and recover quickly. So in Africa, it's crucial and critical. Economically, many African countries can rely on single sectors. For example, according to UNIDO report of 2020, Nigeria relies on oil, and Zambia is relying on copper. So these leave those countries and other countries in Africa exposed to global price swings, for example. So we need resilient planning to ensure that we have diversification of industries, we have adaptation of infrastructure, and we have stability in communities. By the way, according to the same UNIDO report, industrial park in Ethiopia, Hawassa Industrial Park, incorporate renewable energy and water recycling, which reduce climate risk. Well, this is an example for being resilient in the concept of industrial parks. So we have 2 main pillars in our talk. we will gonna talk about climate risks and economic risks. For the climate risks, we can say that climate change presents several challenges for industrial zones in Africa. Those risks demand proactive planning to ensure long-term industrial stability. We have three main risks. Of course, we have a lot of many climate risks, but I'll be focusing on three main risks. The first is flooding. Flooding disrupts production and damage infrastructure, leads to costly repairs. For example, according to Reuters, in 2022, floods in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. I hope that I pronounce it right. It disrupted the Durban port, which is a critical hub for regional trade. That caused over 2 billion in damages. So flood risk is something very crucial in Africa. The second risk is drought. So limit water availability, affecting industrial processes and forcing production cuts. For example, Kenya in 2023, drought forced beverage manufacturers to cut production due to water shortage, threatening about 5,000 jobs. And the third risk is heat waves. And of course, we are in Africa, so heat waves is so crucial. Increase energy demand and reduce worker efficiency. And heat waves also raise health risks. So extreme heat in West Africa, for example, reduce labor productivity up to 12%. And this is according to international labor organizations. So to face those climate risks, we should follow some adaptation strategies like green infrastructure or energy transition. Those are not optional, they are survival. For the second pillar, we are going to talk about economic risks, and we will take three main economic risks in Africa that facing industrial zones. Let's begin with market shocks, which refer to global economic downturns, reduces demand for products, impacting production and jobs. For example, during COVID-19, Africa automotive sector was dropped by 25%. And this is according to African Development Bank. The second risk is supply chain disruptions. Supply chain disruptions are events like pandemics and geopolitical tensions that can stop industrial operations in industrial parks or industrial zones. We have here in Egypt an example in Suez Canal blockage in 2021, which delayed about $10 billion of African trade. And the third risk is local instability. Let's say that political unrest and financial crisis threaten industrial growth and investor confidence. And of course, we know investor is the main part or the main party in industrial parks. So we need strategies that promote economic resilience to mitigate those risks as well. And resilient planning must address these through points we are gonna talk in the next slide. So how to plan for climate resilience? To combat climate risks, urban planning and industrial urban zone planning must integrate three main pillars for climate resilience. Those are creating eco-friendly zoning, using strong and high pavement, using green belts that could combat flooding and improve air quality in industrial areas. Infrastructure adaptation, we may use flood-resistant buildings for factories, advanced drainage systems inside industrial zones, and of course, resilient transport networks and road to move inside the park. And the third point is energy transition. we may make investments in renewable energy and renewable energy sources to reduce dependence on fossil fuels and enhance energy security. So we may find that industrial zones can become more resilient if we are trying to planning using those points. To plan for economic resilience, we talked about climate resilience. So for economic resilience and to ensure economic stability, urban planning should focus on diversification, should focus on policy support, and of course, policy support is related to government incentive in some way, and smart connectivity by using new technology and integrating resilience-focused, integrated digital technology to optimize supply chain and logistics inside industrial parks. Oh, how to create holistic resilience in industrial parks in Africa. To make this holistic view, we must adopt a holistic approach that consists of or contains risk assessments, a comprehensive risk assessment using data analytics to predict and mitigate risks. Well, I have a pleasure about a month ago to participate in UNIDO training. To give a holistic approach, we have three main points: risk assessment and community involvement and collaboration. Those are key for long-term industrial stability for industrial zones. Next, we have some recommendations by policy to mandate climate risk assessments for industrial projects. We have to train planners. This works as capacity buildings, and we have to monitor and evaluate our procedures into industrial parks and try to advance and enhance them. Well, the aim here is to build green industrial zones in Africa, and green industrial zones are mainly depend on renewable energy. They can make green jobs, and of course can use zero waste concept. And green industrial zones represent the future of industrial resilience in Africa. Well, as a conclusion, we can say that resilient industrial development in Africa is a pathway for a sustainable future. This isn't just survival, it's about leading global transition and low carbon economy. And we have African proverb, I don't know exactly where exactly which country, but it says smooth sea do not make skillful sailors. So we should make those challenges just to achieve our goals to create green industrial zones in Africa. Thank you.
Many thanks, Noha. You actually took exactly 12 minutes, which is quite efficient. So at this juncture, I would like to give floor to around 3-4 comments or questions. Then we give you a chance to respond in the next 5-6 minutes. So anyone who is ready, either you could put in the chat so that we collect the questions, or if you raise your hand, then allow you to ask a question or any follow-up. Okay, I see a hand by Mamoi Loa. Sorry, I can't pronounce correctly the other name. If you could just ask your question, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm Mamoi Loa Raputi. I'm from Lesotho, and I work for a trade and investment promotion agency in Lesotho. And I would like to applaud the two speakers that have eloquently talked to the subject areas. And I think the question that I still have, despite what have been presented, it looks like there is a bigger issue that we are failing to really address as the African continent in as far as advancing economic development and industrialization in earnest. Because the issues of master plans, programs that are in place and actually packaging very clear and articulate policies for the direction we would want to take, you'd find most of the economies would have. But the issue is implementation. What do we think really needs to be done? And how can we collectively attain the actual execution of programs on the ground? Because I think if we can really look into our different cupboards and retrieve documentation and plans and programs that we have, we can actually manage to contribute significantly to a change in our industrialization direction. What is it that we can do collectively to try to register a mileage with regard to execution as a continent? Thank you, Chair.
Many thanks. I see a comment from Caroline Ouko in the chat. So what I would like Noha for you is to just collect these questions or comments. So we've already had one question. So Caroline, thanks you for the great presentation. So she has a point on the 3 points to enhance resilience, the issue of community engagement, suggestions, and innovative approaches. Most of the time, there are issues of lack of common understanding due to other issues. So that's what she is raising, an issue on community engagement, which you are suggesting on innovative approaches of improving.
Yes.
Then I have a target. If you could just ask your question, then I also ask mine, then we give you a chance to respond to them.
Yes. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Kumo Tare. I am an attorney specialized in competition law and focusing on regional competition regulation. My question revolves around the geopolitical changes that we've been seeing at a global scale over the past couple of months. I just want to get from the speakers, how do you think the changes, particularly with regards to what's been happening in the US and the global trade relations and the various tariffs, how do you think that's going to have an impact on industrial sustainability on the African continent in the long term?
Many thanks. Then for me, I will not want to, one of them was related to what has already been asked around prospects of policy implementation. So what I'll just ask is, what are the opportunities or what are the prospects of green development and jobs in Africa, which you have also mentioned as part of your recommendations? What are the chances we'll get there? Over to you, Noha. You have around a minute and a half to respond.
Okay, let's begin with your question, because it's obvious, clear that we have everything to implement the green industrial zones and the green industrial economy in Africa. We have labor, we have land, we have resources, we have everything. And of course, currently maybe we have shortage in finance in some countries, but we still have international organizations which they can give technical support and financial support and other support. So I believe as a continent, Africa has a very good opportunity, maybe excellent opportunity comparing to other continents. So for your question, yes, we have a great opportunity to achieve this. So for the question about how to implement the master planning, I believe we should have integration between three main parties, the government, and this is the most important in Africa especially, the government support and the civic society. We should have programs to make people know what is the importance of going green generally and of going for green industries. We should give incentives, like we said, government should share with encouraging investors. They should give, some things like renewable energy are so expensive. Something like achieving zero waste concept using materials or using equipment may be so expensive for some investors, so we should give them incentives. We should give them opportunities to marketing for their products. We should give them wide opportunities to represent themselves to civic society. So we should have the integration between those parties, civic society and government. Government is the main playing role, and of course the international organizations. I believe this integration could achieve the implementation of master planning. I believe we still have a question, but I can't remember it. So can you please remind me?
I think it was from Thage. If you just recap a bit.
Yeah,
Geopolitical. Sure. He asks us issues around geopolitics and how do your recommendations fit into that?
Geopolitical. Well, it's connected to the same concept, to the integration between government and the other parties. Generally, the same concept we should focus on in Africa generally. I don't have any extra points to add.
Hey, many thanks. At this juncture, I still see a comment from on the chat, which I'll urge you to respond on the chat. Otherwise, I would like to thank you for your presentation. I think, to be fair, we can just react by clapping for you virtually as we welcome the next speaker. Congratulations on your presentation. So the next speaker is Jason Bell, who is a researcher at Gauteng City Region Observatory and a member of the Inclusive Economies Research Team. He's a PhD candidate at the University of Johannesburg, exploring the political economy of urban industrial development and evolution in Gauteng City region townships. Jason holds a Master's of Commerce degree, specializing in economics from the University of Witwatersrand. Jason, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Socrates. Good morning, everyone. Very pleasure to be here. What I'm going to be presenting today is a journal article under revision that kind of stems from our PhD research, looking into the political economy of spatial change and industrial agglomeration in the Gauteng City region. What I try to do is take a very kind of long time horizon approach, locating it in particular Bantustans in Gauteng and on the border of the Gauteng province of Transvaal as it was previously, and kind of tracing the evolution of their urban industrial development in these different spaces, very much marginalized during the apartheid and then into the post-apartheid period. But this particular paper is very much focused in the apartheid era. So just to kind of give a broad overview of the key ideas and concepts that underpin this research and this paper in particular. Apartheid's urban industrial system was deliberately structured to reinforce and enforce racial and economic separation among white and black South Africans. It involved different policies such as forced removals to Bantustans, influx controls, industrial decentralization that very much sought to entrench spatial inequalities in the different Bantustans. Now, the overall objective was to create independent areas that were very much separated from white core South Africa, where the core of industrial and urban activities were happening, kind of in this, what they call the Pretoria Witwatersrand and PWV complex. But however, as I'll show, and as other people have also shown, that the Bantustans very much still remain dependent on the core economy, and this led to kind of reinforcing of the economic marginalization rather than creating any kind of autonomy among these different spaces. Now, beyond segregation, apartheid's economy functioned as a racialized political economic system where state power and institutional governance really sustained long-term inequalities. And even after 1994, that's kind of the period in which we entered our post-apartheid era, the policies in private sector investment have not really done enough to kind of fully dismantle the existing spatial and economic imbalances across the geographies. Now, the legacy of apartheid obviously is now still very much present, and it continues to shape the economic trajectories today. So the aim of this article is to kind of examine the geographical political economy using this framework to examine uneven urban industrial development in apartheid South Africa, and then it places it within the Botswana Bantustan as a case study. It reviews, integrates, and existing scholarly debates on spatial and economic inequalities, illustrating how apartheid's Bantustan policies, industrial decentralization, urban planning, entrenched marginalization along multiple dimensions. It explores state policies, racial capitalism, and institutional governance structured through long-term uneven development, and particularly through the spatial economic dependency of Black regions to white cores of economic urban activity. Now, in terms of some of the key themes of South Africa's kind of uneven urban industrial development, different authors and researchers have honed in on specific aspects, those either being urban or industrial development. Obviously, kind of trying to simplify their arguments. I take a more ambitious approach throughout the PhD and in this paper. Some of these kind of isolated works focus on specific issues of urban development, social inequalities that were created through apartheid and have continued to be reproduced in the post-apartheid period, even leading to new patterns of socio-economic segregation. From the point of view of industrialization and economic exclusion, much of the work is focused on industrial decentralization, minerals energy complex, and the roles these have had in reinforcing racialized economic structures through confining Black laborers to periphery geographies and periphery zones, where these areas were dependent on the apartheid urban industrial political economy. Now, a third aspect, and the one that this paper tries to contribute to, at least I feel it does in its current form, involves an interconnected view of urban and industrial policies, such that it views them as being intrinsically interwoven throughout apartheid, and when viewed collectively, can be seen to have been instrumental in shaping long-term disparities. The outcome of this is that contemporary development should take a holistic and nuanced approach to understanding South Africa's uneven development pathways in specific areas. Now, several problems arise out of this discussion, and these include the dependencies on Bantustans on the apartheid state, which created imbalances in uneven development despite efforts to relocate manufacturing to periphery areas and townships. There are documented critiques of the development literature as lacking concentrated discussion on the structural linkages between urban and industrial development. These have tended to contribute to a specific type, an explanation of a specific type of uneven development. And what I try and kind of contribute here is that we need to have an even development discussion that encompasses a range of different aspects such as political, economic, and spatial. So this paper is arguing for the need to embody an integrated approach that synthesizes political economy, economic geography, and institutional analysis to examine the long-term effects of apartheid and understand the contextual historical inequalities that were fostered in specific industrial areas, industrial townships. Now, crucially to this discussion is kind of the role of land and space in economic organization. And conceptually, the paper drills down on this and focuses on how land use and distribution shapes economic geography and how it was shaped by political economy. Location is critical because it serves as a focal point for inequalities and the relationship between capital and labor. And now this harkens back to some seminal work by the likes of Neil Smith, who very much kind of, let's say, brought the concept of uneven development into the mainstream, and more recently, assertions that economic growth in one area kind of is inextricably linked to undevelopment somewhere else. And that, of course, reinforces regional disparities and exploitative relations between core and peripheral spaces across a different geography. Now, theoretically, there's two approaches to understanding uneven development. The first one is the neoclassical approach. Now, I don't know why my slide is not updating, but maybe it'll come through now. So the first one, the neoclassical perspective, is very much rooted in classical economics, by the kind of top left there of Alfred Marshall. And this argues that disparities in urban industrial growth are due to differences in factor endowments. So this is due to differences in factor endowments, competitive advantages, and the efficiency of markets. On the other hand, Marxists tend to believe that uneven development was an inherent feature and still is an inherent feature of capitalism, driven by capital accumulation and class struggle. And this is still a core driving kind of area of inquiry and force for many contemporary writers in the Marxist economic geography field, a la David Harvey and again, Neil Smith. Now, however, neither of these two approaches fully capture this, the specificities of South Africa's complex uneven development. This is due in the neoclassical sense to kind of an ignorance of historical structural factors, neglect of political and institutional influences, and an overestimation on the allocated efficiency of markets. Traditionally, Marxism also had faults for its overestimation of economic determinism and its underappreciation of local agency in shaping a development. So in search of a more complex, as a more comprehensive conceptual framework to stand out, given their ability to help us explore questions related to uneven development and specifically with strong explanatory power to the South African historical case. These are the evolutionary economic geography and geographical political economy, which fall somewhere between the neoclassical Marxist kind of extremes. EEG, or evolutionary economic geography, is useful insofar as it can help us explain industrial clustering, regional growth, and firm strategies as components of complex systems. However, it lacks engagement with politics, power, and institutional dynamics across space. GPE, on the other hand, provides a framework that integrates political economy, institutions, governance in its explanation of the linkages between spatial economy, inequalities, capital accumulation, the state, and historical legacies. So then, obviously, kind of as the title of the paper suggests, I focus on the geographical political economy framework because it allows you to better incorporate and comprehend the structural barriers and challenges facing South Africa's persistent race and class-based economic geography. So just to kind of maybe hurry up a little bit, now in turn, kind of turning to describing this kind of geographical political economy of apartheid's uneven development, I explore several themes. These are the politics of spatial industrial development during apartheid, the role of institutions, power and agency, the embeddedness of the MEC, value capture, and black labor boom industrial complexes. Okay, so in terms of the politics of spatial industrial development, enduring structural patterns of inequality were created through white minority governments. Apartheid really reinforced racial segregation to ensure social control while also trying to promote urban industrial expansion. It was very much relied on a system of migrant labor control to sustain industrial growth. Now, from the perspective of institutions, power, and agency, apartheid's Bantustan policy institutionalized segregation before pivoting and trying to make them independent. However, these areas remain politically and economically dependent on the apartheid system. Now, in terms of apartheid's efforts to try to erode economic power and kind of gain more power for Afrikaner capitalists, the minerals energy complex was accompanied by efforts to kind of accomplish its racial and political goals through urban industrial policies. So it quickly pivots into the case of Professor Swana. You know, this was very much, and I'm not saying this was the only one, this is the one I focus on. This was an outcome of apartheid's geographical political economy and the conditions it proliferated led to several industrial townships on the kind of in buffer zones that are kind of between the white urban core and Botswana on the border of the Transvaal province at that time. And these were direct outcomes of victims of systemic and concerted efforts to foster an uneven spatial arrangement across the South African geography. What we have was a kind of an urban industrial underdevelopment occurring for various reasons. And then the second key point driving this underdevelopment into Botswana was this paradoxical development agenda during its what's often called quote unquote independence. So in conclusion, considering I need to kind of hurry up here, the argument that I'm making in this paper is that apartheid's creation of uneven urban industrial development was the result of a multidimensional segregation agenda. And kind of I take a reframing of the existing historiography with additional archival resources. And I think that this kind of thinking of these issues in this way deserves consideration given the interconnected nature of urban and industrial policies designed to drive race and class-based nationalism, white capital accumulation, and spatial displacement. I have an important point is that there was kind of almost an abject failure of apartheid's industrial decentralization agenda, despite efforts to change and rejig the set of incentives. It was very much, let's say, almost panned and not taken up by existing white capitalists and even new white capitalists to the degree that was envisioned. Still, these kind of this urban industrial policy agenda as a collective approach did create specific urban industrial orders that still persist today. We still very much have segregation, and I'd say at least economically, and urban, if you look at the kind of the transport linkages and the lack of those, with a lot of rural migration still coming into the urban cores. The implication of this, lastly, is that we need to view these issues as a development through a multifaceted framework to allow us to better comprehend the legacy of apartheid and the impact this has had on Gauteng's ongoing spatial and industrial disparities. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Jason, and congratulations on your presentation. Just like the previous presentation, this juncture, I would like to give us a chance. Anyone who has a question, a comment, feel free to raise your hand. If not, you also put in the chat. Yeah, I already saw a comment from Jezri. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, you're pronouncing my name correctly. So I just wanted to, I suppose, comment on when you talked about how the kind of Marxist dependency theory academic lineage had several issues, and one of those, the ones you identified, was this kind of structuralist economic determinist framework that it's often perceived as coming with. And I felt that it's somewhat an unfair accusation with some forms of Marxism, that very often it tends to come from a very Western Marxist perspective that is stuck with people who've never done a revolution and so don't believe it is possible. But in fact, I know it's going quite radical, but even if you look at the Maoist traditions or any tradition that has been involved in a national liberation movement, they're obsessed with local agency and the way that changes world systems and not collapsing to world systems or neocolonialism. And there's many writings about how, not how any local agency can affect world systems, but how strictly organized local agency in certain types of political organization definitely can.
Many thanks for that, Jezri. Then we have Tage.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right, yeah. Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, Jason. My question has to do with the peripheral areas, these peripheral industrial areas, particularly in the Bophuthatswana area. We have the old Babelegi industrial area, the Garankuwa industrial area. What we've seen post-94 is a lot of these places have experienced deindustrialization in the post-apartheid South Africa. I just want to hear from your side. Do you have any comment on how the current context can be applied to sort of endure some sort of industrialization within those zones, or should they just be left so that we can centralize the patterns of industrialization?
Many thanks for that. Then we have Mamo Iloa. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. I think my input would be also a consideration of a dimension in which the apartheid regime mindset that people have had has had them imprisoned in that mindset, such that even when opportunities and other avenues or levers are there, they still are not able to optimize and explore them. And to what extent is that possible? Because I think looking from afar, not necessarily a South African citizen, I have seen a number of opportunities that have been offered to those that seem to have been undermined by the apartheid regime. But even when the opportunities are veiled, you don't see traction in terms of actually changing the narrative, and to what extent has that contributed to the status quo.
Many thanks for that. So, Jason, you have three very good questions, some touching on your approach, methodology, some also on the realities that are actually in South Africa. I think mine, lastly, will be just around if you could also just elaborate what the policy is, a Bantu stands policy. I think that's what I picked from your presentation.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to start at the beginning. Cesare, your comment on the critique is only on Western Marxism. It's fair. I didn't maybe the way you're framing it, I didn't get a question out of it. I take that criticism well. I will think about how to kind of restructure the thinking. I guess the issue I had is trying to obviously be as succinct as possible, and that very much leads to generalizations, and you almost pick kind of one side over the other. I think maybe that if I could provide some more context, the issue is that I found in the broader research is that much of the policies that South Africa, both in the apartheid and now post-apartheid era, have been based on policies developed through experiences in the global north, very much Westernized type of economic development thinking. So I guess to place the contrast between kind of neoclassical economics, Westernized kind of Alfred Marshall, etc., within a Western-focused Marxist viewpoint is kind of my logical next step. I get that there's many different strands and whatnot. I just don't think it's within the question that I'm asking in this paper and in the PhD in particular that is within the scope to take such a deep approach. Very much most of I'd say the writers that I'm aware of, and again, this probably there's a Western bias, is economic geographers, Harvey, etc. The guys that are really at the fore of driving kind of the economic Marxist economic geography points. Whether I have engaged with to a good enough extent Eastern Marxism, if we can kind of create that dichotomy, that's something
Just
I
when you
can
have
think back on.
around a minute.
Sure, thanks. So the current context of industrialization in different industrial townships, Karankua, heard Babeleki, that is very much or at least Karankua and then Winterveld form the basis of deep investigations in the post-apartheid period in the thesis. I utilize kind of this thinking and this kind of urban industrial development agenda of apartheid to demonstrate how these areas were created and what they were created for. And then in the post-apartheid period, I do take a more kind of contemporary look at what's happening in these areas. I'm happy to talk about that in more detail, maybe offline somewhere. I can kind of explain some of the details behind the different evolutions in those areas that I have done work on. The psychology of, I guess, non-traction of economic development policies. I wouldn't say I'm in any way qualified to speak about why people don't take up stuff. I haven't. The focus isn't at a on the ground entrepreneurial level. It's more kind of an institutional approach, kind of top down. I have asked some firms different aspects, but not necessarily speaking to why particular issues or development policies have failed, and kind of maybe even putting it at the feet of people just not willing to take them up. I haven't done any research on that, and I don't think it's even within my field. But it's an interesting question, something that maybe someone else be willing to provide some information on at a later stage. The Bantustan policy elaboration, this can go very deep and very long. Again, maybe we could take it offline. I have to provide you with any kind of context and resources you might want. But basically, the Bantustan, or as in kind of the terminology of the day, the homeland policy was very much trying to force people through forced removals and resettlement patterns to settle in different spaces along ethnic lines. So the apartheid government was in its racist agenda was trying to say all the Twanas must go to Botswana, all the Zulus must go to KwaZulu-Natal, and that's kind of that's the crux of it. Very simplistic and very summarized, but yeah. Thank you very much. I don't think I saw anything else.
Okay, many thanks, Jason, and congratulations on your presentation. I think besides also having a bilateral chat with me, just on the policy, you could also check the comment that Jezreel had left in the chat, just to elaborate what he was saying. Otherwise, I would like us to virtually congratulate you. If we could just clap for you as we welcome the next presenter. So let's welcome the next presenter, who will be just a moment. The next presenter is Abdoulaye Savadogo, who is a student in applied economics at the University of Nobat Zongo, Kodu, Burkina Faso. He has a master's degree in applied economics, analysis and economic policy. He's a founder, member of the Center of Studies and Research on Human Development based in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, and also a member of the French Association of Development Economics. Abdoulaye's research interests include foreign direct investment, structural transformation, institutions, economic development, and urbanization. Abdoulaye, Monsieur, bienvenue. Please start once you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Our paper is on effect of foreign direct investment on structural transformation in women countries, the role of corruption and democracy. We have 5 minutes to present introduction, main contribution, methodology and data, main result, conclusion, and policy implication. So structural transformation remains a big challenge in the developing countries, mainly in the women countries. Despite the high quantity of the natural resources, the contribution of manufacturing to the gross domestic product in women countries is highly insignificant. Where still, these countries are experiencing desindustrialization. According to World Bank 2023, manufacturing value added as a percentage of GDP fell from 13.09% in 2002 to 9.78% in 2021, compared with 23.45 to 24.13 in eastern part of Asian and Pacific countries in the same period. So structural transformation refers to the relocation of resources from low productivity sector like agriculture to high productivity sector like manufacturing and services. So structural transformation refers to the relocation of resources from low productivity sector like agriculture to high productivity sector like manufacturing, industry, and services. So structural transformation can play an important role in the economic development. So it improves labor productivity, facilitates technological decision, creates a productive employment, and has a spillover effect on other sectors. However, the question of financing is structural transformation remains a great issue. The developing countries does not have a sufficient domestic resources to finance their investment project. In these cases, FDI can play big role. In fact, FDI provides an additional resources, facilitates technology transfer, and provide an important human accumulation, capital accumulation between countries, developed and developing countries. So in the last year, the share of FDI net inflow has increased. According to the World Bank data, net annual FDI flow as a percent of FDI in WEMU increased from 0.81 to 5.04 over the period 2002-2021. We have three good authors on effect of FDI in strict rate transformation. Firstly, some author FDI promote strict rate transformation, over some author FDI does not improve strict rate transformation. In last, some author as FDI has not effects on strict rate transformation. Moreover, some institutional factors such as corruption and democracy can play a catalyst role in this relationship. According to North and Williamson, institutional help to reduce uncertainty in transaction costs, which can encourage investors to take the risk to invest. Also, investors not motivated to invest in a country with high grade of corruption because corruption increases the business cost. In such a context, we can ask ourselves the following main question. That is, what is the role of corruption in democracy in the effect of FDI on strict rate transformation in women countries? What are the direct effects of FDI on strict rate transformation in women countries? What are the interactive effects of corruption in democracy with FDI on strict rate transformation in women countries? We have three contributions to extend and enrich the literacy on effect of FDI on strict rate transformation. We focus in the direct effect of FDI on strict rate transformation, but also on the interactive effect of corruption in democracy with FDI on strict rate transformation. Lastly, we contribute to realize the sustainable development goals in the aspiration of the African Union's agenda. We use an autoregressive distributive lag by pooled mean group estimators. We use the annual data that cover a panel of 7 countries in the women over the period 2002-2021. The data are from World Development Indicators, Worldwide Governance Indicators, and Foundation for International Studies, Research, and Development. So look at the direct effect of FDI in strict rate transformation. We have a positive, a significant effect of FDI on strict rate transformation because FDI improve technological diffusion and human capital accumulation. We have also positive and significant effect of democracy, voice and econ on strict rate transformation because democracy can encourage the foreign investor. So look at the interactive effect of corruption and democracy with FDI on strict rate transformation. We have a positive effect. Control of corruption in democracy improve the FDI attractiveness and encourage the investor, can motivate investors to take a risk and invest. Summarize, the results show that FDI has a direct positive and significant effect on strict rate transformation. In addition, corruption control and democracy, improve the effect of FDI on structural transformation in women countries. Implication: the public decision makers in women countries should improve the attractiveness of FDI, particularly in the manufacturing sector. In so doing, they need to improve the business climate to encourage more the FDI inflow into the manufacturing sector. So these countries should also fight corruption and promote democracy by setting awareness raising, sensitization, setting up anti-corruption committee within sectors to ensure transparency, strengthening the rule of law in organizing fair elections to ensure political stability. Thank you for kind attention.
Félicitations, Monsieur Abdoulaye. That was very efficient. You spent actually 10 minutes on your presentation. So this is a time to welcome the comments. But then, of course, one thing I also like about your presentation is that you are co-authoring with one of the APORDE alumni, Professor Idrissa, who is also here. So let's, just as before, let's pick some comments and questions. I already see, I think I saw a comment on the chat on how you are measuring democracy. By Jezri is asking how you are measuring democracy. Let's wait and hear whether there is any other question, comment. Over the question I had are two. So number one question is your measure of structural transformation. I see you only relied on value addition. Did you consider other aspects such as employment by sectors, because that's what some other studies have been using, or even some studies which have gone further and used decompositions. So I think there's a Shapley decomposition, which some papers have been using to measure structural transformation. It measures between and within transformation, and then you can see it. The other thing is whether you might consider normalizing your indicators of democracy and corruption. I see right now they move from -2 to 2.5. Why can't you just normalize them to range between 0 and 1, or between 0 and 100%, so that it's easier to interpret your results? Those are my two questions. Let me see whether there's any. We also have a question from Dr. Kiru in the chat, asking about what sectors in YM countries are most affected by FDI, and how did these sectors contribute to the overall economic transformation? So you have around 5 minutes to respond to those comments. Over to you, Monsieur.
Okay, thank you for your question.
Yeah, we can now hear you. Go ahead, please.
Currently, we use voice and account from world governance indicators to estimate democracy. Secondly, the mining sectors, attractive sectors, is most sector attracted by FDI. FDI can contribute mostly to mining sectors. In fact, FDI contributed to the economic development by decision technology and human capital accumulation in contributing to increase the government tax in employment.
Okay, Abdoulaye, is that all?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if there's any other question or comment from the chat, since we still have time. I don't know, did you comment on Dr. Kiru's question on the chat of the sectors in YM countries that are most affected by FDI, and how did these sectors contribute to them?
Mining sector.
Okay.
attractiveness.
Okay. Yeah, there is a question from HI. So he's asking whether there are matrices in African Union 2063 agenda, the Africa we want to inspire, peer review governance in Africa, especially with respect to the AU programs on accelerated development for Africa and PIDA. So he wants to know whether there is any indicators or matrices that indicate the African Union 2063 agenda, the Africa we want.
Okay, it is a command.
I think the last thing I will ask is China plays a big role in Africa's structural transformation. How do you handle for the effect of China in your analysis? Thank you.
Okay, the China country contribute to the structural transformation in Africa because China can give technology, transfer technology from China to Africa countries in the money, human capital, like engineering and technician.
Okay, that's fine. Abdullah, once again, felicitations on your presentation. Let's just react at the bottom as we move to the next presentation. I've been your host, Socrates Majune from the University of Nairobi. I would like to thank all of us for attending this session. And please feel free to reach out to the authors either on the chat or also on the email addresses. Thank you.